Dynamic chess. How to play more aggressively and think less about material. That's not easy. That was when I was starting out as a chess player. I really counted the pawns all the time, and you were also missing the pawn when you got to the end game, and it wasn't there. So sacrificing something was really not easy to do for me and for most players. And then they have a chess culture like in Azerbaijan, where they grow up and are sort of feed in the mother's milk, that you have to activate your pieces all the time, and it's much more important than material. So let's see a game where I played yesterday in the Danish League, where I managed to do that. And I was black against Rasmus Thogersen, um, and I decided to play the Sicilian, which is more of a dynamic opening than e5. By the way, the Danish League started yesterday. Køge, with a lot of foreign strong grandmasters, won both matches very convincingly and are already heading for another win in the Danish League. Hillerød did rather well, and we have a good chance of at least getting maybe medals this year and a place in the European Club Cup. Last time I played with Rasmus, I lost a rather horrible game, and I was eager to get my revenge. And here here we have the Svesnikov variation, and of course Rasmus didn't expect this, and none of my teammates did. And Rasmus asked afterwards if I had played this before, and I could tell him that this was my main opening as black before he was born. So, and he didn't, of course, go back that far in his preparation, which is probably a good practical solution, not to look at games from 2 centuries ago. Anyway, no, sentiments ago. Yes, and I didn't know what I thought he would. Here he had earlier took on f6, which is the most aggressive, and black has to take back with the d pawn and get a strong center, but also a really weird pawn structure. But I like that you get the bishop pair in the Svesnikov, and that's also when you have the bishop pair, which we have seen in some other games here on GM Talks, you can often play more aggressively and think less about material. Bishop d5, knight c2, and this is all theory, and knight e7. And I remember when I was preparing this as white, I thought this was really annoying. This knight e7, just exchange the knight and play with the bishop. And white actually, the black knight on c6 is often not that great, so it makes a lot of sense to just exchange it here. And he took immediately. I'm not sure. I think a4 is the main line or something, but I don't really remember. And be2, bishop e2, and I was out of book here. The way I prepared for this is that I know the positions, so I was not so worried about understanding what's going on. So I just played through some games with Magnus Carlsen and some games with Sergei Sigalgo, who's playing this in a lot of blitz tournaments in the past 2 years. So I was more or less copying their repertoire and just saying, okay, this will be fine. And anyway, in this Svesnikov, you often get some chances. The only thing that's really here is really critical is knight d5, which has attracted a lot of theory and was one of the things that Caruana did against Carlsen, and I think Kayakin has also done this against Carlsen a few times, and that black really has to know what he's doing. So that was what I prepared most sort of in details, while the rest of the lines was more like, okay, you can play this, and so on. Anyway, let's go back. Take bishop e2 castle. castle. And here, usually you put your bishop on e6. That's where it belongs. But I thought this was rather passively the way White has made this his setup here. So I played bishop b7 and queen d3. And here the computer already liked my position a lot and want to play d5. And I thought about it and I thought, okay, I can maybe play d5, but he will take and he will play knight e something and we will exchange a lot of pieces. But the computer is very sure that this is great for black. So I probably should have played d5. Instead, I decided to play f5 and actually sacrifice a pawn. And I kind of like that, and I have long time ago decided that I will try to play more dynamically. And what do I mean by dynamic? I mean play less for material and more for activity and sort of tempi, and so on. So trying to play for activity and attack and care a little less about material and say, okay, you can take a pawn, or you can probably, this pawn will be weak later and I don't really care about that pawn because we are after something else. And the thing is, if you when you sort of just believe, say, okay, this attack will have to work, and then you sort of liberate some energy and you play much better and become much more dangerous. I'm sure these great attacking players, dynamic players like Vasily Graf, they don't see everything. They just see some of it, and then their intuition says this is good, this I can play, and so on, and then they just play it and do well. So f5 was more, I didn't know, and of course I'm not getting my pawn back immediately here, but I do have a strong center, and I do have two nice bishops, and you could imagine these two rooks would be good. So my hope is to basically, I want to push those pawns into his head. So I really want to get those going at some point, and maybe win the pawn back and then attack somewhere here, or maybe here, and also let his pieces stand in the way. A4, very natural move. Another move that I didn't consider but is the computer says is interesting is rook e1, just eyeing the queen here. A4 is natural. Take, and there was a lot of lines where suddenly white get bailed out by a check. So in the corner we go. And basically you could say why black has simply sacrificed the pawn, but he has some sort of compensation here, and I would rather be black here because all the fun is with black. If white plays well, he will have a half a pawn more or something, but if he plays badly or something goes wrong, he will be crushed. And this is, of course, the scenario I am hoping for. Rook fa8 is also the computer's main move. Rook ad8 is also the main move. Hereby, I'm sort of giving up on this pawn, but saying that, okay, but if you take it, it will take a lot of time, and you will not get any exchanges for it. You will just misplace something on the A file. So and also all the pieces here are sort of gone away from the poor king down here. So there is some hope at the moment. There's nothing to attack there, but it will come in the future. Queen h3 is holding on to this one and threatening this one. So it makes sense. The computer does not like it. Bishop c8, attacking the pawn here with two pawns. And of course, if I get that, then this one is hanging. So that would be unpleasant. Here the computer says he has to play g4. And I think if white ever plays g4, then black will definitely have compensation in a practical game. It will be, you have to be a computer to play positions like that after d4. So I don't think humans can get away with g4. Bishop g4. Instead, by the way, here he should probably have played something like bishop f1 or something would have been better. Oops, sorry. Um, Rook f6. I really like that. That's combining. It prevents the pawn from moving forward. It defends this pawn. It has a lot of interesting squares everywhere. And it can also, and here also. So this makes the rook much stronger than just sitting on f8 and hitting on f6. Um, Rook a5, and that's a mistake. And it's hard to understand. It's sort of, it blocks the pawn. It somehow it threatens here, and you don't get these tactical a5 that sometimes work for for black. But you somehow you can sense that the rook is actually a tactical liability here. It could get into trouble. Bishop b7, strong move. And here we really have to start thinking about defense. Knight b4, rook h6, also a very strong move. Queen d3 and d4. And this was definitely, and here I thought he was completely crushed. You see, and of course, if you just count upon, you can say you can even take here. But of course, if he takes here, e4 and e3 will come, and black will be totally crushed, and white will be totally crushed, and that's not so easy to see. Um, for instance, here, let's say something like this, and e4, and you can already sense that something is not right here for white, but it's not concrete variations. It's more like a feeling that you were going to get crushed soon. The pawns are just gonna keep rolling forward, and and suddenly this ups. Now I did a lot of weird stuff here. Anyway, so this is more of a sense you get, and of course d4 is not, you don't calculate all the way. You can see, okay, you can't take because rook takes and hits, or I can even take the queen. And also e4 is threatened, so it looks very natural, but you don't calculate all the lines. Queen c4 prevents the e4, it looks like, but of course it doesn't. By the way, the computer even like rook h4 here, and then just do some nasty thing with h5 and take on c3. This is kind of funny, but the natural move is of course e4, opening for this and getting ready to play forward here, and and this is what I really fear when I'm white in something like the Sveshnikov, is that really bad things can happen really fast for you in this position. Here he took here, and here I made a mistake, which I thought was very natural. The correct move here is bishop d2, opening for the queen to come here, ready for e3, hitting this one, hitting this one. What more can you ask from a move than after bishop d2? And it simply wins. Bishop f4 looks natural. I thought that I had to cover something here. I'm threatening this one, and here he has to play a3. And unfortunately, I thought after this I was totally winning, but knight d3, and it's not so simple. He will maybe be able to defend. It still looks rather good. The computer says it's totally equal. Of course, black's activity makes it almost certain that he will not lose the endgame, because he will pick up some pawns somewhere along the way. Instead of this move, white did this move, and you can just sense that this can't be right with this stuff coming here. And so black to move here. What would you do if it was a blitz game and you didn't have to calculate and you didn't care about material? It would be very easy, wouldn't it? And of course in a normal game it's also easy, because it just wins to play e3, and there's simply nothing for white here. If he takes on f4, then just queen h4 is more or less mate in very few moves. So it's already totally game over here. He tried f3, and here it makes, of course, sense. He's blocking this diagonal, but oops, was not correct. This diagonal. I'm sometimes not too smart. Um, this diagonal. But this lives, and I'm always very afraid of passed pawns, and for good reason, because it's this threat is rather serious. Of course, rook e1, and here and this is something you should probably train to do. Is black wins very fast. You just do this, and take. And this is something I think most grandmasters would see in the blink of an eye. It's just something that has to sit there, that this wins. Here, there's this. Oops, keep doing that. This problem and this problem. So black is of course he's mating, a force mate. So this kind of lines is rather easy to see. So white has some serious problems here. He covers it with the knight. Here. And here, of course, what do we want to do? Well, what I really would love to do is to play something like this, right? That would be cool. Unfortunately, white has this move. That went too fast, right? The thing is, of course, again, you can't take due to this move, and the pin makes him mate in another two moves. Something like this, and here, and here. So rook h2, but he has a spoiler, f6, and suddenly he has rook f5, and it's not so clear. It probably wins anyway, I don't know, but there's no reason to allow something like this. It would be stupid to allow this. So instead, what to do here? Black to move and win, and it's a forced win. So it's not so. It is maybe difficult. It's also kind of counterintuitive. This you see this piece is hanging. By the way, this is what I call mathematics chess. You just it doesn't matter how many pieces are hanging, because you can only take one at the time. So mathematicians, they don't care. They say, okay, you can take this, then I take this, then you take this. So it doesn't matter if four pieces are hanging, because you can only take one each move. Okay, so the winning move is rook c6, hitting the knight. If he moves the queen, I just take the knight, and e1 is coming with a new queen, and also, by the way, hitting this from behind, sort of. This is rather funny. So rook c5 is more or less forced. Take, and here calculate, and check. He can't take, because then I'll get a new queen. If I takes, then I just, so he has to go here. Take, rook d2, threatening this move, check. And this is smarter than rook d1, because then after rook d1 he has something like maybe, I don't know, rook a3, or he could take, and no, rook d3, rook a3, I think. Anyway, this was smart, because after knight e1, rook d1, I'm ahead tempo up on the other line, and he has to go here, and I have seen it all here at this moment, winning the knight on e1. He takes here, and is threatening mate in two moves, but unfortunately for him, after this check, the king has to go here, loses contact with the pawn. So here black just have to avoid getting mated, and he will get a queen, and bishop f8 is probably the simplest move. Something like this, and you just go here, and there's nothing to see here at all. So and well, no matter what, I will play queen, e1 queen next move. So that was a rather nice game, and this was the kind of chess I tried to play 20 years ago, and I'm coming back to it now. This was DM Talks. Thank you for watching.